Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How you doing over there, Gray?
Hey, what's going on there, B Dun? I'm pretty good. I'm looking forward to the third baseman podcast today because not because the third basemen are good, but because we've gone over so many of these guys in other positional podcasts that I'm like, you know what? The position's not good, but there's a lot less of them. So
Yeah, we might keep this one actually, under 2 hours, which would be a good mark for us compared to some
yeah.
of the other podcasts we've done. You look
Listen
like you're
to
about to go
I
strolling the Italian countryside there, Gray, in your Ferrari
Yeah,
pullover.
yeah. What's up, Paisan? Hey. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what Beaton's talking about. I'm wearing my Ferrari pullover. I don't have an actual Ferrari. I have a Ferrari shirt.
It seems much more reasonably priced. I mean,
you
still
know,
probably too expensive, but much
yeah,
more reasonably priced.
yeah. But you know what? When you go out though in like Beverly Hills and people see you in a Ferrari sweatshirt, they're like, "Oh man, check out this guy." guy
Better make
must
sure we take care of him.
Yeah, this guy's a VIP right here, right this way, sir. Oh, do you speak English? Yes. I'm sorry, my English is not so good.
Then again, a pickup truck these days costs about as much as a Ferrari. So really, like, what's the difference? Uh,
Yeah. Well, when you throw it, yeah, when you consider gas, for sure.
all
Uh,
right, so let's move on to third base here, Gray. Let's go ahead and get into it so we don't push out our timetable that we said would be under 2 hours. This and I think this goes to this year, but also this position. It feels like there's a lot of value placed on certainty. Like this year, this position specifically. I mean, maybe I'm just making it up, but it does feel like there's value placed on like the supposed certainty that we have on players just because the last like we haven't had real seasons. Like the last three seasons are all kind of different. We have the shortened season, a home run ball season, and then a dead ball season. So like we're all kind of figuring it out. Am I making this up? Does it seem like that to you that like the surefire guys or quote unquote surefire guys are going a little earlier even if their numbers really aren't there?
yeah, I mean, it sounds like you just made that up.
Okay, that's fine. I'm
No,
just that's
no,
possible.
no. I'm joking. No, I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's a group at the top, guys we've gone over already in like the top 10, like Jose Ramirez, and then like the top 20 guys, like the Machados and the Devers and the Rileys of the world. Like we've gone over those guys in other podcasts, and yeah, I mean, there is the certainty of those guys. Like I hear what you're saying, but the only like I'll push back a little bit and say like those guys no matter what position they would be at, they would have certainty because they've done it like year over year so many times that like Jose Ramirez with second base eligibility, or Manny Machado or Riley or any of those guys with other eligibility, they would be going at the same spot. It's like you're drafting them because of the stats more than because of third base. Like I don't think anyone's drafting like Machado because it's like, well, I mean, they're happy to fill their third base slot, but they're not drafting him because of third base. They're drafting him because he's Manny Machado and he's done it for so many years in a row. So, like, that's what I would say because it just happens to be that the position has those guys at the top of it. Like, there's no like there, I think it's just a coincidence that they happen to be third baseman, but and they also happen to feel very safe. So unlike second base, which is accurate if that's like what you're getting at, like second base has no real certainty at the top, where third base at least has certainty at the top, even if it's not a great position as far as depth wise, it's still good in the beginning, right? I mean
Yeah.
that's I mean more or less what you mean.
So I was actually thinking more in the overall than like position by position. Like within the overall, it feels like, and maybe this is just again, I think it happens every year to some extent, but like the guys who have a track record and a track record going back maybe more than the last 3 years, or if it's within the last 3 years, it's the guys who have shown like elite skills, like a Vlad um, type of guy who like popped up, and we all know his skills and what he can do. like he's going up there, but like most of the other people going up in, or I guess it's not even the top 10 or top 20. It's really just like as you go down the list, it feels like there are guys who are getting bumped up because we feel like we can kind of know what to pencil in as their stat line. And again, maybe that's just me making things up. Maybe that's me being a little bit more on the, you know, risk
Yeah, I
taking
mean, I
side when I draft a team.
maybe. Yeah, possibly. I understand further what you mean. Yeah, no, I mean maybe. I just feel like the third baseman and in general, like the positions are like the stats are the one like I'm ranking stats more than I'm ranking like I don't believe in position scarcity, so I'm ranking stats as it is versus anything. Whereas like the guys who are going up top and or anywhere in there, they are who they are essentially. Like, and there's some risk involved. Like, we'll get to guys in the third baseman where there's risk. I mean, there's like Jose Miranda, who actually we went over in the first baseman, for instance. Like, I mean, I wrote a sleeper post on him, so I do like him, but he's got risk involved. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying, though, I guess.
All
Kind
right, all right. Before we just go down this rabbit hole, let's get into third base. You already mentioned some names off the top, 1 through 5. We've already talked about that is Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado, Bobby Witt Jr., Austin Riley, and Rafael Devers. I think maybe the only ADP kind of question in there is Manny Machado over Bobby Witt Jr., and you just take Bobby Witt Jr. so we can move on from that one. Um, the next tier, which is a solo tier because of just the way the 1 through 5 works out, I think, is Nolan Arenado. Last year, he had 30 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 73, 103, and hit 293. This year, you have him projected for 30 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 77, 101, and a 268 average. Most of his numbers were pretty much in line with career norms. But it looks like both you and Rudy have the average dropping from last year. Everything else pretty much in line with what he accomplished last season, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, see, with Arenado, I was kind of concerned going into last year. Actually, I wrote a Schmohawk post for Arenado. I said he was overrated going into last year. I was proven way incorrect. I was I was
We both were.
I was pretty off on that one. Let's just say the inaccuracy meter went. It was going off. My when they were checking me at TSA for inaccuracy, it was beeping. So anyway, though, with Arenado, I think there's a good chance, like at some point, he does fall off. I mean, it's got to happen. Like, because if you look at his numbers, and this is why I was worried last year. Now, I am a little bit concerned this year. I'm not out on him because he proved me wrong last year and it made me look like an idiot. So I'm not going back that well. Like I'm baby M, like it ain't happening. I'm baby Jessica staying away from that well again. But I will say the problem with Arenado is his fly balls. Like he has so many fly balls, and like if his contact is just dips just a little bit, like he sticks like his homer per fly ball last year was 12.5%, and that's not great. I guess, but because he hits so many fly balls, like he hits 50% fly balls, so that's fine as long as the ball is going out. Like last year, he got up to like 30 homers and he hit 293 with a high BABIP. I mean, he hit a 290 BABIP, which for some guys wouldn't be high, but for him, that's high, especially with a 50% fly ball rate. Like his 50% fly ball rate, and if he has a 250 BABIP, I mean, he could hit 245 with 30 homers. And that's assuming the ball keeps going out for him. Like at some point, the ball's not going to go out anymore and he's going to plummet. Like he is actually, I mean, he's really prone for a huge fall off. I'm not like last year was the year I thought it was going to happen. It didn't happen. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to say it. I'm not saying it again, but I will say I do worry there's a little bit here that could potentially like bottom out. Like his numbers look like a lot of like aging superstars where it's like a ton of fly balls, really low Ks. Like he doesn't strike out a lot, but at some point the bat speed is going to slow up and he's going to hit 245 with like 24 homers and you're going to be like, "Oh god, what did I do?" What did I do? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just a little concerned. That's all. I'm less concerned. I was more concerned last year, but I probably should be more concerned this year if we're being honest. But maybe I was a year ahead. We'll see though. Yeah. What's your thoughts, be done?
Yeah, I mean, having him, prove it to you in a season should make us feel more confident. But I'm with you. Like the launch angle and the fly ball rate has been climbing his last 3 years. Even when he was in Colorado, like he did not have a 350 BABIP in Colorado like so many people do. Like he was a career 299 BABIP guy in Colorado of all places. Like he's not really a 290 BABIP guy in St. Louis, given that information. Like he's not hitting the ball as hard as he used to in Colorado. Like the fly ball and the launch angle up. Like I don't expect the 293 average to repeat. I kind of as you've kind of done. I expect the home runs to come down. Not like I don't expect him to collapse into like a 20 home run guy, but I don't really expect him to necessarily exceed 30. And I project under it like you did here. So, I mean, I'm pretty much in line with what you have here. I think he stays in the middle lineup, which gives him plenty of counting numbers. He's a 25 to 30 home run guy and a 260 to 270 hitter with neutral BABIP luck. And that's assuming, like you're saying, he doesn't kind of hit that wall where the ball just, he's hitting 350-yard fly ball outs.
Right. Yeah. And if you look at like Zip's 3 year projections, because they do projections for 3 years. So if you look at their projections for the next 3 years, you see like he's definitely not on the up. I mean, it's like it goes from like this year they're projecting 25 homers, 273. Then next year they're saying 21 homers, 260. Then the year after they're saying 18 homers and 250. Like he's definitely on the verge of decline. But hopefully not this year. Like I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was going to be last year, and he ended up being more than capable of keeping up. Like he was an MVP candidate. Like he was really good last year. So hopefully he can keep it together another year.
Yeah, and in drafts, I will say like he tends to go a little early for me just because I'm more of a power speed guy at that point in the draft. I don't want to take my shot on a guy like Arenado, who's really counting numbers, and you're hoping for 30 home runs again. And again, I don't expect him to hit that high average. So I think if you're taking him inside the top 30, he needs that average.
Right. Yeah, no, completely because like that's a in general like Arenado's always needed that because he's never going to give you speed. So it's like if he's not giving you 30 homers and at least 275, you're kind of like yeah, hopefully he gets 120 RBIs because it's not great. And also we were saying, you said before like he was in a tier of his own and it really is like it's kind of interesting and like the first like we talked about the first baseman back in the first base podcast obviously. But like there was a huge tier in first base, like it was like there's a huge separation between the first two tiers, and in third base it's like there's Arenado and then there's like no one for a while. Like it's a good 40 picks between Arenado and Bregman, who's going to be next. And that 40 picks doesn't sound like a huge amount, except it is when it's like in the top 50 overall. That becomes a really big gap. Like the 40 picks between 120 and 160 isn't a lot, but between 40 and 80, it's a pretty large gap. So anyway,
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next guy. That is Alex Bregman. This starts the new tier for us. He had 20 home runs, one stolen base, 93, 93, and 259 last year. You have him projected for 24 home runs, two stolen bases, 97, 90, and 266 here. We talked about Bregman some last show, and that was more like talking about his name value, where he's going in drafts, because again, this is kind of what I was getting at in the lead was, he's kind of being overvalued because of the production he's provided and the kind of consistency you expect from him. But also when you start looking at third base and just in the positional rankings, it's really hard to fault you for putting him inside the top or at seventh here, because this position gets kind of droopy real fast.
Yeah, no, completely. I think also with like Bregman, I was just going to like quickly, I was going to look at. Oh yeah, okay. So on the player rater last year, he was at 59 overall, right after Edwin Diaz. For those people who are crazy about drafting closers early, and he was a little bit more valuable than Christian Javier, Shane Bieber, and Nestor Cortez for people who like to draft pitching early too. But I think the with Bregman, I think the really what you're drafting is like the stability of knowing you're going to get a guy who's going to give you, like I said, 59 overall last year was how much value he gave. I would say he's probably a good bet to give that value again. Like last year's numbers wouldn't blow you away if you just saw them. He had 23 homers and one steal and hit 259. Sounds pretty blah, but he came with 93 runs and 93 RBIs. Now, obviously, you shouldn't draft necessarily for runs and RBIs because they can be fickle, and it's about lineups and about where a guy is sitting in the order, but I mean, Bregman, of all the guys, I mean, Bregman's pretty locked in to a lineup that is really good. Like, it's not like Bregman's going to suddenly start hitting eighth and in a bad lineup. Like, he's going to hit in the top of a really good lineup, the top three spots of a very good lineup. And he's going to hit you know, he's going to hit well enough. Like, it's not going to be like amazing. Like, I don't think like Bregman is not a guy who I'd be like, yeah, he's probably a good chance to be like a top 20 overall guy next year. Like, I don't think that. I don't think there's any way like he gets anywhere close to like a top like 20 guy overall on the player rater this year. I don't think he's going to be drafted as a top 20 guy overall next year. Like, I don't see, like, he had that huge year when they had the bouncy balls in 2019 when he hit, like, when he had the MVP year and it was like 41 homers, five steals, 296 average. Like, I don't think we're ever seeing that again. But I also don't think we necessarily need to see it for where he's going in drafts. Like, I'm not saying he's necessarily gonna like give you a ton of value, like above what you think you're gonna get, but you should get what you think you're gonna get, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. Like he's going to give you what he's going to give you. He's not a league winner. He's not going to outperform his numbers by, he's not going to be that 41 home run guy he was. He's not going to steal 17 bases like he did his second season. Like that's not going to happen. But if you're looking for consistent production at third base position, and that's all you're looking for, you're taking your shots elsewhere in your lineup, or you're just trying to build like a consistent productive lineup, then Bregman's going to give you that. So, like, I completely understand why he fits here. He is safe for the counting numbers, as safe as anybody that is going to be drafted where he is. Certainly, I will say I think there's an outside shot that we get kind of a bounce back in the balls, and they move from the dead balls to somewhere in the middle, and maybe he can add a few more home runs and make himself more valuable. But if that happens, then everybody's home runs come up, and it's kind of a moot point.
Right. Yeah, I mean maybe. I don't know. That at this point I just feel like I'm just going off of whatever the balls were last year, that's what I'm assuming it's going to be this year. I mean, they could totally bounce back. I have no idea, but at this point you're just guessing that they're going to bounce back.
Yeah. All right, moving on. The rest of this tier is number 8, Gunnar Henderson. We talked about him last show on the shortstops, and number 9, Tommy Edman, who we talked about during the second baseman. In your next tier, it starts off with two guys who are, I mean, essentially the same production here, and Eugenio Suarez and Matt Chapman. Um, the difference between them was 4 home runs and 7 points in average last season. And the difference between what your projections are is 2 home run and three stolen bases. That's essentially the difference between these two. So let's just group them together and talk about Suarez and Chapman here.
Yeah, well, they also are going within 2 spots of ADP. Once Eugenio's going at 153 and Chapman's going at 155. So they are essentially the same. It's just a little bit taking a little bit of the power from one guy and the average on another. And a little bit of Suzanne is what I need. Sorry, I just started doing Mambo number 5. A little bit of Monique is what I don't even know the names. Yeah, I think with Eugenio also, in a big picture sort of way, like Bregman. You mentioned guys who have third base eligibility, who we've gone over in other podcasts. So it's not like it's Bregman to Eugenio, but Bregman to Eugenio is like 80 picks. Like there's a huge difference between like all the guys who have and that's on my rankings. Like on ADP, a guy like Max Muncy is in there, and Jose Miranda, who I don't have between those guys. Obviously, you just read off the rankings, but I mean, Eugenio, I think Eugenio is a little bit underrated. Now, I don't necessarily think his average is going to bounce back, and that's probably why he is, getting drafted around where he is. He's not going to be a great average bet. I think he's probably like he wasn't necessarily let's see, on the player radar last year, he was 89th overall. So he was a top 100 value guy last year. And if you look at his numbers, like he had a 31% strikeout rate and a 302 BABIP with a 236 average. So my takeaway from that, which should be probably most people's takeaway, is that average is a little bit high. It has the potential of coming down even further, which it isn't great necessarily. I like you said, I have him down for 227 average this year. There's projections. I'm on the high side from looking at other people's projections. Like Steamer has him at 210, and most people have him between like 210 and 220. So there's a chance his average could totally bottom out. And if he's not hitting a lot of homers, you're really, it's like you're not getting anything basically. If he's not hitting home runs, you're getting nothing because he has no speed whatsoever, and his average is pretty low. So I could see why he's going where he is. Like there is a chance that you're getting just a total anchor, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like he's only 30. Well, he's going to be 31. He is 31, actually. So he's 31 years old. So you're probably not going to get, any big like year like he did in, when the bouncy ball was in 2019, he hit 49 homers. Like you're not going to, and he was also in Cincy, which is a huge, you couldn't get a bigger difference between Cincy and Seattle. So I think there's probably not a huge upside here. Like you're not going to get like, Eugenio Suarez come in with like 37 plus homers and a 240 plus average. Like I don't see that happening. But I also don't think Eugenio Suarez is necessarily like he's kind of like a real poor man's Alex Bregman in that like you're probably getting the value you're going to get. Like you're getting the 30 homers and the 225 ish average, which is not, I mean, it's not amazing, but it's also, like I said, he was 89th on the player rater last year. It's not nothing, it's something. It's a top 100 to 120 overall guy, which in deeper leagues, that is really valuable. And in shallower leagues, I think it's playable. I don't, I think it's not necessarily that, I mean, he's going 11th in the position, 11th overall, at ADP in the position. He's not. I don't know. I mean, he's not terrible. I want to. I'm not. I feel like I'm being like more positive than maybe he deserves by saying not terrible, and that's still not the greatest of compliments. So I mean, he is what he is, more or less. I don't think he's like. I just don't see a huge upside from him. Unlike Chapman, who well, I'll let you talk about Eugenio, and then I'll talk about Chapman. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned everything there is to say about Suarez. I mean, he's hitting at a 20-degree launch angle now, which if he just keeps going up is going to just be fly balls. That's all he's going to hit. That's going to bottom out the average. He does hit the ball very hard when he hits it. So, even in Seattle, he put up 31 home runs with the dead ball. So the power, I don't necessarily think that's going anywhere. The average, I 100% believe the average is bottoming out this year. I would take the bet on like under 210, maybe even under 200.
Wow, what a hater.
Yep, that's me.
Matt Chapman, I haven't we haven't seen it since the bouncy ball of 2019, when he hit 36 homers. But I think Matt Chapman actually has upside. Like I grouped him with Eugenio, who has no upside. But because at the end of the day, Matt Chapman's like most realistic projection has him basically being similar to Eugenio. Like that's like realistically, he's probably the same as Eugenio, but I do think there's some upside with Chapman. Like I look, if you've seen him hit, especially with like I think with the Blue Jays moving in the fences a little bit, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Chapman have a little bit of a breakout year. Like I don't necessarily, I wouldn't bet on like a MVP type year. Like I still think his average is going to be somewhat like blah. Like he's a 240 average guy for his career. Most projections have him like in the 230 range, even some as low as like 225. I wouldn't be shocked to see Matt Chapman have like a decent year, but there's nothing really that I can point to at least. Like he has an insane launch angle. He has like huge fly balls. Third base position in general hits a lot of fly balls. But Chapman, Chapman, I think his numbers don't necessarily back up like a breakout is coming. But as a total gut call, I could see Chapman having a big year. So without any evidence to prove my point, like he just feels like a guy who could like hit a bunch of homers. I don't know. You have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I tend to agree, actually. I think that this could be where a little bit of value comes from. I think he could be, a 30 home run hitter pretty easily. I don't expect the average to come up necessarily, but I don't really expect it to bottom out yet either. I mean, either one of Suarez or Chapman could bottom out. They both have such ridiculous launch angles. They both put too many balls in the air. They both hit a lot of infield fly balls. So either one of them could drop out. But we're looking at like a 277 BABIP from Chapman last year. And he actually hit the ball harder last year than he had in previous seasons. So I really think that like if there's one of them who kind of sticks in their average, sticks in that 230 range, and he hits 30 home runs, I think it's Chapman over Suarez, but I expect 30 home runs from Suarez easily.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair way of putting it. Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Like I feel like Suarez is more of a floor bet, but his floor is much more solid than I think Chapman's. But Chapman, I think, has some upside. So, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I will say I think Chapman's defense is maybe a bonus point for me here because Suarez is so absolutely awful on defense that he could miss out on some games because of it,
Oh my
whereas
god!
Chapman's going nowhere.
I just had flashbacks to when Dumb Bell in Cincinnati
Played him at short.
Torres at shortstop. Oh my god, that was the best. I was like, You can.
A guy that has range one step either way should not ever play shortstop.
Oh my God, it is so funny. I mean, really, probably the dumbest guy on the planet is managing the Reds. Oh man.
Yeah,
So
not great. All right, so number 12, 13, and 14, we've already talked about. That is Ty France, Jose Miranda, and Alec Baum. Number 15 is Josh Jung. Last year, in 26 games at the major league level, he had 5 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and a 204 average. In AAA, in 23 games, he hit 6 home runs, 1 stolen base, and a 273 average. You have him projected for 24 home runs, 4 stolen bases, 64, 75, and a 242. He had a chance to make the team last year, had the stretch factor in his foot, but now everything is supposed to be good to go. Are you in on Joe?
Um, I was just looking at the Rangers lineup. How did the Rangers spent like $700 million on like their middle infield and have Robbie Gross as a left fielder? What?
And Leone
And like Brad Miller as their DH, and it's like they're so top heavy. They have like three guys that they spend 700 million on, and Jacob DeGrom and Semyon and Seager, and then it's like, Jonah Heim is batting cleanup. Good luck, fellas. Like I don't know what they're thinking with that. Okay, anyway, yeah, Josh Jung, I haven't really I've only drafted like 4 or 5 teams so far. That sounds like a lot, actually, when you think about we're still in February. But yeah, I've drafted like 4 or 5 teams. I don't think I've drafted Josh Jung. I mean, I sort of feel like the skills are there, but like his numbers do not jump off the page when you look at his like he did have a good, like 2021 was a good year for him. He had like 19 homers across like two destinations in the minor leagues, Double A and Triple A, through 88 games. Excuse me, 78 games. But yeah, I don't know. Like I am positive. Like in my rankings, I'm totally positive about drafting Josh Jung. Like I feel like I would do it, but then I look at his numbers and like I tend to just like hold my nose and draft like a Justin Turner instead, like who we haven't even talked about yet. We'll get to him, but I mean, like Josh Jung, like there's nothing, like everyone's saying he's gonna be great. Like he has like supposedly a great hit tool, and he has incredible power, and maybe it does show up this year in Texas, but I don't know, man. I haven't really bit the bullet on Josh Jung, and if I'm being honest, I've looked at him when he's been like at the top of the queue, and I've been like, nah, maybe I'll take an outfielder. I don't, I mean, and it's nothing like, I don't know. I've not really been able to get behind like drafting him. He's got like no speed whatsoever, so he's got to really hit like 25 to 28 homers and 250 plus to really actually move the needle at all at like, in shallower leagues. In deeper leagues, he has the third base job according to the Rangers, and I don't see why they wouldn't play him because he, like you said, he was supposed to play last year, but then he got injured, so he should have the job from Jump Street. But I don't know, man. I just haven't been able to get really that pumped up about drafting him. What do you have any thoughts?
I do like him, and he's going after pick 200. So I mean, I like where his price is at. Um, I can understand where you're coming from. The numbers last year certainly didn't stand off the page, but if you think again back to 2021 when he was healthy, he had 19 home runs across 2 different levels. He hit somewhere between 308 and 348. Those are the two averages he hit in the 2 different levels, and that was in like 78 games. So he had 19 home runs. He had like 320 in 78 games in the minors. He got hurt at the beginning of last year, so I'm basically wiping out last year like it didn't happen. I think he was recovering, and then the Rangers like, screw it, just bring him up. We were going to bring him up anyways. Let's just have him face major league pitching, even though he's not really ready to come up yet, or because of the injury, not because of where he is from a talent perspective. So I'm willing to take the gamble because I think last year he was probably going in the same area, maybe even a little earlier pre-injury. Then the injury happens. Everybody's like, oh, well, now I'm out because he's injured and we're not going to see him. I think you're getting him at a slight discount this year and even more assured playing time than we had going into last year, because last year was like, he could make the team. He might be our third baseman. Whereas this year, it seems like they're pretty committed that he's going to be stepping in. He's going to play most days.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, I agree. I think he's the third baseman. Like I'm not really worried about that. And I do agree that his price is cheap enough where, yeah, I mean, if he's going at like 220 overall, where his ADP is sitting, then yeah, I mean, it's not a bad game. I mean, there's worse guys to grab. I just don't know like what it is, but he's just not super exciting to me. Like and the projections, like you look at the projections and it's like they're projecting like 22 homers and like 240 average with zero to five steals. Like I don't know. It's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fine. I mean, it is totally fine at his draft price too. It's just so kind of like, yeah. I mean, maybe this is the year finally. Maybe it's just like he's gone stale for me because it's been so many years now where it's been like Josh Jung. It's his year. This is the year he comes up and he's gonna hit, and it's 2021, and here we go. And then he's like, no, he didn't come up. And it's like, okay, 2022, this is the year he's coming up. He's gonna be great. And like, no, he didn't really do it. So maybe I just have Josh Jung fatigue. Fatigue. It's Italian.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the projections are weighing last season pretty heavily. And again, the numbers were bad last season. I have nothing to say about that. That's 100% true. But again, I'm pretty much pushing those aside because he was dealing with a stress fracture in his foot. He had screws put in his foot last season. Like that takes some adjustment. So I'm willing to take him again, but it just sounds like maybe you're in on him, but less excited than I am.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 16 is Brian Hayes. I think at one point we kind of thought he was going to be a little bit more exciting. Not so much. Last year he had 7 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 55, 41, and he had 244. You have projected for 9 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 73, 81, and 252. I mean, it's one of the few sources of stolen bases at this point at the third base position. But that's really that's what you're saying about Brian Hayes is that, I need stolen bases and I need a third baseman. So he's sitting around.
Yeah, no, completely. I think if you've drafted the Eloy Jimenez's and the Teoscar Hernandez's of the world at outfield and Yordan Alvarez, and you're like, I got a lot of power, but I got no speed, then you're probably looking at Brian Hayes and you're drafting him. Otherwise, I think you're probably just almost completely ignoring him in most leagues if you don't need steals. Like his numbers are, he could actually stand to take a couple batting practice sessions with Bregman and Arenado and some of the earlier third basemen just because of the fly ball. I mean, his fly ball rate, it makes Yelich blush. Like, whoa, bro. Brian Hayes he's hitting some worm killers, bro. The PETA is gonna do a campaign against him killing ants. Like, dude, hit the ball in the air once in a while. Brian Hayes' launch angle is just his launch angle last year was double from 2021. and it's still awful.
It's still 5 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, his in 2021 it was 2.6, and last year is 5.2. Like, whoa, dude, come on, man! Like, what are you doing, bro? And his ground balls are like 50%, and his fly balls are 28%. Yeah, it's ugly. His, like, I don't know. Like I do think with like a swing adjustment, like it wouldn't shock me to see him like, he's still basically young enough where if he had a swing adjustment and started hitting more homers, like if he snuck into the 15 to 17 homer range and still stole 20 bags, like I could see him moving up in drafts next year. Like he could be a guy where it's like, he's a 2020 threat now. Like he's Sterling Marte. I don't think that's gonna happen. I could see it. I wouldn't like completely shock me, but and I don't think it's gonna happen, but I could see it potentially, like just with a little bit of a swing change. But as we see with Yelich, swing changes are not easy to come by. Like Yelich, all Yelich needed to do was a swing change for like the last 3 years, and he, he can't do it. So I wouldn't count on it, but I mean, I guess that potential could potentially it's there somewhere in the mix. Like he could be Sterling Marte at third base, but that chance is like it's like a 5% chance on that outcome. Like the more than likely outcome is going to be under 10 homers with like 17 to 22 bags and a 250 average.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're pretty much spot on here in regards to just the way that he needs to approach it. If we're going to get kind of any jump in value, is he needs to find the launch angle because he does hit the ball, fairly hard. He's top 50 in average exit velocity and hard hit rate. So he's hitting the ball hard. He's just hitting it straight into the ground. I will say, like you mentioned, he could maybe become like a Starling Marte type. Like Marte is one of the fastest players in the league. Brian Hayes is not. Like he is stealing
That's fair.
bases. Like
Right.
he's stealing
Yeah.
bases because the Pirates suck, and they're like, whatever, go steal bases. We need as much value for you as we can possibly find before we trade you before you hit arbitration. So like, go do whatever you can so we can get value out of you. He was 210th last year in sprint speed among qualified players. Like he's not that fast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. And that's a worry too, because it's like if he were to not steal as many bags, like that's the only reason why you're even drafting
If
him.
he's 8 and 10 with a
Yeah.
245
Yeah.
average and the runs and
Yeah.
RBIs that come with hitting low in the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup, like,
Right.
ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's another guy who's like, so that's sort of the problem with third base. Like when people are like, well, third base is really shallow, and it's like it's these guys why it's shallow. Like the top guys who we mentioned earlier, like the Machados and the Jose Ramirez's and the those guys of the world, like the top 100 third basemen, they don't have a ton of question marks and they feel real solid and their floors are good. Like, like even we mentioned with Bregman and Arenado and stuff, like they don't feel like as dangerous as like the top second baseman, but there's no upside at third base. like, like upside has left the building for third base. It's like when like this is why it's shallow because it's like, you look at Brian Hayes and you're like, this guy could hit 7 homers and steal 7 bags and hit 245. This is not good. This is not great.
Yeah. I mean,
And that's
honestly,
like upside. Like this is like the upside area of the position. So it's like, yeah, this is not good.
yeah. I mean, we honestly can look at this position and to this point, we're 16 third basemen in gray. If we start talking about how many could actually outperform like their draft position by any kind of reasonable, like meaningful measure, there's like three of them. Like Gunnar Henderson could do it, but he's already
Yeah.
being drafted pretty high. Like Jung could do it if he just kind of reverts back to 2021 and hits a lot of home runs and shows his power and a little bit of average. And then like I don't know. Maybe like Jose Miranda or Alec Baum could maybe blow up. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. obviously could, like, if he just does what he did last year and does it for a full season, maybe there's he could move up a little bit, like at least in your rankings. But like there's not much profit to be made at this position. Like you're finding a guy at your ADP that you're comfortable taking and getting the stats that you expect from him.
Yeah, no, completely. Like if you look at, like I mentioned earlier, the player rater from last year with Eugenio Suarez, he was the ninth third baseman in value, and he was at 89, with Chapman behind him at like $2 less though, so he wasn't that close to him. So I mean, and above him, like guys, all guys except for Brandon Drury, who is the seventh best, and that felt like the flukiest ass like Cincinnati Red, like like
Oh, the
almost
Reds.
like the Scott Schlablers of the world at the Reds, like just out of nowhere, it's like, hey, Scooter Jeanette's a top 20 guy. Whoa, here we go. Like what? Like guys just come out of nowhere on the Reds to hit really well for like 3 months. Here, and it's no correlation to reality. It's just they have like a magic pill that they take and they're good for like 3 months. Random guys on the Reds. So I mean, so yeah, but otherwise it's all guys in the top 10 on the third baseman, and it's not guys like it's like Austin Riley, Manny Machado, Jose Ramirez, like guys who are going very high, and then you have like a huge drop off, and the guys who in the rankings. So then going to this year, you look at the guys and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, Brian Hayes isn't good, and he's not getting drafted like he's good, and when I draft him, I'm not expecting good. So, it's like it's basically it's just like the position is so apathetic. It's like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not
You
getting
play every day.
yeah.
That's fine. We're good. We're
Yeah,
good.
yeah, you're playing for 145 games. Okay, all right, I'll take you. Let's see what happens, champ.
I think part of what that is what we discussed. As we've covered a lot of these guys already, because third base has become kind of like this position
Yeah,
where they
like
just stick
catch
random
all.
people.
Yeah, it's total catch all. At third base is just like it's at third base has become where like I feel like when we were younger, where what shortstop was in like the aughts and like the 90s, when it would be like these random like just defense. It was defense first at shortstop for a long time, and it would be like these random dudes like Alex Sanchez, and it'd be like, oh, Alex
Yeah.
Sanchez. That really pulled that name out of my ass. But I mean, it's just like, and the third base right now is like that, where it's like, well, he's got a good glove, I guess. He can't hit worth a lick, but we'll
We have like
see.
six people who had over 250 at the position, but yeah, we're good. We're good. Yeah, I mean, at least it made sense at shortstop. Like shortstop there's so much range to cover. Like it made sense, and back then they were like, oh, if you play shortstop, you're gonna get injured, so you moved you off the position so you wouldn't get injured and your bat would stay in the lineup.
Yeah.
Now I don't really understand it. Like third base, it's just
Yeah,
kind of collapsed in on itself.
it's a hot corner. You know what I'm saying? Just
It's
not
not
the
hot
hot,
anymore.
not the hot bat corner. That's all. Okay, let's move along.
No, yeah, I mean it's more like the I don't know. It's not hot anymore. We're
It's
we're
it's
we're
the
not Maxim. We're like
it's
home and
what
garden.
it is, Don. It's the not corner. What? And I'm okay. Let's move
All
along.
right, next tier here. We've talked about almost everybody in this tier, but the first few are Ryan McMahon at 17, Josh Rojas at 18, Max Muncy at 19, Brandon Drury at 20, and Luis Arraez at 21. Coming in at 22 is Justin Turner. Last year he had 13 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 61, 81, 278. You have him projected for 15 home runs, 0 stolen bases, 69, 79, and a 274 average. I mean, it's Justin Turner. He's very boring. He's definitely an injury risk at this point in his career, but he at least has an average over 250, which, as we just mentioned, is very rare for the position.
Yeah, and also I think going with in Fenway because Fenway is such a great park for Babbitt. I wouldn't be shocked if he hits 300. It's like he's getting older, so his bat's slowing and his Babbitt is dropping, and he's probably more of a bet to hit 270. So don't take this the wrong way, but I don't know. I think he's got a little bit of upside on his average from his like at 278 last year. Actually, the last 2 years he had 278. One more year and he gets to sleep with Chris Davis's wife. Huh? Up to her. It's up to her. Yeah, Justin Turner. I think he has no real power, and Fenway's not going to help. I think I think with his line drive ish launch angle, even and actually he hits a decent number of fly balls.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
got
I
more
could
fly
see.
ball recently.
Yeah, he's got more fly ball tendencies than I remember. So anyway, though, I think the fly balls could be hitting he could hit a lot of doubles in that park. I wouldn't. He only hit 13 homers last year, and I wouldn't really expect him to bounce back to like the 27 homers he was at like earlier, but earlier in his career for a couple years, like 2019 and 2021, he hit 27 homers. But yeah, I could see potentially Justin Turner bouncing back a little bit and being like a 15 to 17 homer guy with like a 280 plus average. Like that wouldn't really that wouldn't surprise me at all. He has great plate discipline. He doesn't strike out a lot. I don't know. I mean, I find myself more or less punting third base and grabbing like a Justin Turner because I mean, his value, it's not like he's great value, but he's going at 250 overall ish. And it's not like the most exciting pick, but honestly, at the end of the day, like him or like Brian Hayes, like if you don't need steals, I mean, Justin Turner's not a bad. I don't know, and he's going like 80 picks after Brian Hayes. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't love it, but like because it's not really like I'm not usually a guy who would say up I'm not a Justin Turner type drafter. Like I usually would say upside if you're getting that late in a position, like going for the upside instead of that, but there's no real upside at third base. So it's like, I mean, I don't know. Some people, I guess, are looking at like an Anthony Rendon and thinking upside, but like I look at Anthony Rendon and I think 60-day IL stint. So I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, you got any thoughts on Justin Turner?
Not really. I think what you said is pretty much what I would echo, in that the average could come up. He should play most days. He's going to be in the middle of the lineup. You can expect like 125, 130 games. That's pretty much what he's done pretty consistently over like the last 6 years. Obviously he had 150 games in 2021 and then the shortened season. But like you can expect around 125, 130 games. So for that period, and if you're deep at the position, I don't mind going Justin Turner. I think he's fine, and he's probably going to give you runs and RBIs at that point in the draft where it's kind of hard to find because most of the guys who are sitting in the middle of the orders are gone well before then.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I I mean, unless he gets like injured to the point where he misses like a majority of the season, and that you can't account for. But if he plays 135 games, I'd be shocked if he doesn't have the fantasy value of better than his ADP. Like last year, he was the 14th best third baseman. And this year he's going as the 22nd best third baseman. And I mean, I'd be shocked if he's not at least if he's hitting in the middle of the Red Sox lineup with Fenway, like I said, with the wall there. I mean, he's gonna be a 15 to 20 overall third baseman on the player rater, I would bet, and he's going at 22nd overall. So it's like there's not a ton of plus value there, but there's a little bit. And he's more or less going to return value, which is, that's something. And when you've drafted all upside earlier, sometimes you just want someone to just return value.
Yeah, and especially as you get deeper in the drafts, and if you've gone with a more upside type of draft up in the
And
higher parts of the draft, like
especially in a deeper league, like in a deep league, like an AL only or like a 15 team draft champions, like Justin Turner. At the end of the day, you're going to be like, wow, and I didn't think I was going to play Justin Turner, every day, every week. But like a guy like him sitting in the middle of the lineup, it's just like they just accrue value.
yeah, they do. Not the way I went with my AL only team, which you wrote about your team that you made. But yes, that's very true. Spreading out kind of the risk is a nice way to do it. I will say, you can expect a little bit of missed time because he is like 63 years old. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, you should get fairly strong numbers from Justin Turner. Just nothing overly impressive, really. Number 23 is Eduardo Escobar. He had 20 homers last year, 58, 69, he hit 240. You have him down for 23 home runs, a stolen base, 61, 72, and 231. Struggled most of last season, finished strong in September. This is something I wanted to bring up, Gray, because we're finishing up the infield positions, and I've noticed we've kind of seen a number of boosts in September from players like but Bichette, your boy, being the top one in my mind, like just 400 hitter
Why,
in
why do you,
September.
hey, Beat on, why do you hate Bo Bichette? Wow.
Anyways, so I mean, some of that's call up, some of that's who's playing, pitching, healthy, blah blah blah, and all that. But I do wonder if something happened in September. Maybe we got a different ball. Maybe some of those Yankee balls they were using for Judge started to slip out because there was 1,047 home runs in September. 960 in June was the closest, and like there was one other month over 900, and the rest were in the 800s. Gray, like 200 more home runs in September than we had in most of the other months.
And
It's kind of
they were
ridiculous.
all hit by Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols.
The best barrel rates, the best hard hit rates. Like it's, I don't know. Anyways, if we get back to that ball, I just think there's something interesting there. Just wanted to bring that up. Anyways, Eduardo Escobar had a bit of a down season, but he also had his like across the whole season, not just September. He had his best barrel rate, he had his best hard hit rate. Um, but I will say the launch angle, fly ball rate, which we've talked about it. A lot of these third basemen has jumped the last two seasons, which is probably where his average has gone.
Yeah, and it's like Escobar is just another like a Justin Turner and a lot of to a varying degree, like a lot of these third basemen, like Bregman earlier, what I mentioned with him. Like I don't think like Escobar is going to be like I don't see any huge upside, but I also feel like his floor is pretty solid. And if you have to draft, like if you like in a deep league, if you need a guy who is going to be in a lineup, a good lineup too with the Mets. I think Escobar could surprise, like not. Well, I wouldn't say surprise as much as like he's going to return value, and it's like at a certain point when you get this late in drafts, and Escobar is actually going at like 400 overall in ADP, so he's going way. I have him. I think I have him ranked like a good 150 picks earlier. Like he's not like he's going at 400 overall, but if you look at his like on the player rater last year, he was the 21st best third baseman. Uh I have him ranked around there to return value, and he's going around the 33rd best third baseman. So he's going way later. Yeah, I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't think there's any huge upside here, but if he hits 22 homers and 240 in like the Mets lineup, he's going to get like, 55 to 62 runs and 65 to 72 RBIs. Like it's going to be somewhere in there. And, there's value to that. I'm not saying there's a ton of value. Like that's why he's going late as he is, but he's going in like ADP is going too late, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree that he's going, just too late for what he could potentially provide. Um, Certainly last season wasn't great, and he's projected to hit very low in the Mets lineup right now. But looking at the Mets lineup, like he's currently projected at the 8th hole. He could easily hit 5. Like there's Nemo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso at the top. Nemo hasn't played a full season except for last year ever in his career. So maybe McNeil moves up, which moves, which means Eduardo Escobar can move all the way up to potentially 5, I think, because I don't think Dana Vogelbach, Mark Conha, or Omar Narvaez necessarily have to hit in front of him, and he's a switch hitter. So I do think there's room for runs and RBIs to go up. And if he hits 250, 20 home runs, and moves up to 5th in the lineup and gives you 70-70, like the only difference really between him and Bregman is what, like the RBI numbers?
25 RBIs and
Yeah.
25 runs. Yeah, no, totally. That's what I like you look at Escobar and like so many guys who are going above him, like very like Ryan McMahon or Escobar, like you're kind of splitting hairs on like their stats. Like and Escobar's going like 150 picks later. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense other than just he struggled a lot last year. And Brandon Drury is also on this list. I mean, he's going double, like he's going half of the picks ahead of. He's going inside 180, or he's going around 180. We got Eduardo Escobar going in like the 380s.
Yeah. We
Like
need
Brandon
a
Drury
we
just came out
actually
of nowhere. Like what did
no,
people
we
really
need a
expect that?
Brandon Drury. We need a Rasball a glossary term for like a Brandon Drury and Joey Menez type where it's like they come on and they get like they're like Brandon Drury this year is getting drafted at like 180 after last year he wasn't drafted at all. Like he wasn't even drafted in the top 700 last year. But this year he's going at 180 and I bet next year he's going at like 400 again. Like Brandon Drury makes no sense. Like I'm sorry. And now he's in Anaheim. Yeah, have fun. Have
Yeah.
fun with that one, bruv.
It feels like people are panic picking him because like when he gets picked, like both second base, third base, and first base are starting to look ugly. So I feel like people are drafting him like, oh well, I got one of the 3 figured out. Like I'll just draft
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. There's no, totally. Like, there's no rational reason to draft Brandon Drury. Like, you can't tell me you're rationally saying like, oh yeah, Brandon Drury's good after because he was good in Cincy for 3 months. Did I just not mention Scooter Jeanette? Like, guys, like you're falling for the banana in the tailpipe again. You realize that? Okay. Anyway.
All right, next tier. We've talked about all these guys, so I'm just going to read off the names. That is 24, Brendan Donovan, 25, Juan Yepez, 26, Chris Morel, and 27, Luis Urias. Next tier, 28 is Yandy Diaz, 29 is Rodolfo Castro, and we've talked about both of them. So let's get on to the next 4 guys here. And I will say this group, this next 4, is the biggest differences among the players you've ranked and what Rudy has them ranked in his projections. And it goes both ways. So the first one up is Jordan Walker in Double-A last year in 119 games. He hit 19 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 168 and 306. You have him projected for 14 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 51, 56, and a 262 average. And this is one where you are considerably higher on him than Rudy. And I guess that's more about playing time than the actual production.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you've seen anyone who doesn't know Jordan Walker, I ask you to now go on to the interwebs, presented to you by Al Gore, and Google Jordan Walker video. I mean,
Fastball.
this guy's he's gonna be a superstar, bro. I mean, I haven't seen a guy like, I mean, at 20 years old, he in Double-A, 2020 306. And that was like that felt like just the tip of the iceberg. This guy's gonna be amazing. I mean, and also by the way, at this point in the draft, like these guys aren't even being drafted in 15. So not some of them aren't getting drafted until like the last rounds of a 15 team league. Like these are very late flyers. Like Jordan Walker is not a 12 team Rasball commenter league guy. I mean, he's going after that, and for good reason. Like he may not be up until June and he may not be up in June even. Like he's super young. Like I just mentioned, like he's only 20 years old. But seriously, just go watch video of him because he's beautiful.
Yeah.
He's gonna be a top 20 player, probably in 2 years, I would say. Like if he, I think I think he's ready now, but I don't know. Maybe he doesn't get called up until September. I don't know. I don't know when his ETA is. I think he's ready, but maybe September. My my contact at the Cardinals, who I was talking to, they think June. So I'm drafting based on June, but yeah, it may not be till September. You know, a lot of weird things happen with prospects. Maybe like if he goes to AAA to start this year and he rips it up, they're gonna be like. I mean, unless they're really getting what I don't think they're getting from Lars Nutbar, I think Jordan Walker is going to be up real soon. So I don't know. We'll see. But he looks beautiful. He's really good.
Yes, I mean he does, and for what it's worth, the itch in his write up of the Cardinals prospect list said that if he could redo his top prospect list, Jordan Walker would be one. That's over the likes of Corbin Carroll, who we are all excited about and being drafted very highly. So the one thing I will say is if you're drafting early in an RCL type league or just a shallow league, I do think if you spend your last pick on Jordan Walker, I think there's worse things you can do because if he happens to break camp, you're going to have to spend so much fab on him to get him that if you can just grab him early as a very late pick in a draft and see if he makes the team, I think he's worth that late round pick just to see if it
Yeah.
happens because there's not much else that's more exciting that you're going to find where he's going in drafts.
Yeah. No, totally. That's a good point. I honestly, if at a 12 team in a 12 team auction, like doing like if you get to the free rounds or for a dollar pick, I mean you could do worse because you're going to be able to fill in off of waivers anyway once the season starts. If Jordan Walker isn't, it doesn't like shock the world and break camp. Like if he shocks the world and breaks camp, like you said, his fab's going to be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely crazy. And if you have a draft, his draft price is going to skyrocket. So again, I
Yeah.
think there's value there. I think you can do it.
I haven't been as excited about a prospect in a long time. Like watching him, like he looks like Jordan Alvarez with speed. It's like
Yeah,
insane.
yeah.
Yeah.
Acuna was on that. Like Acuna was just like he was amazing. But he kind of popped up out of like the Australia Winter League. Like he kind of came out of nowhere. So we didn't have the time to kind of wait for Jordan Walker or Ronald Acuna like we do with Walker. But again, the Cardinals have like guys who are easily replaceable in my mind if Jordan Walker's ready. Like Lars Nootbaar can go, Juan Yepez can go, Dylan Carlson. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a great prospect too. But if Jordan Walker's outperforming him, like why not? Tyler O'Neill was awful last year. Why
Yeah.
not Brendan Donovan? Like Brendan Donovan, whatever. He can go back to being a bench guy. So I think there's opportunity for him to slot into a starting position and even potentially move up. Like he could hit one very easily if he's just raking right out of the gate.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, moving on. Number 31, a whole lot less exciting, but Brett Beatty comes in at 31. Last year, in 11 games in the majors, he had 2 home runs and 184. He had 89 games at Double-A, which was his biggest stop. He had 19 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 73, 59, and 312. I mean, he hit well. He's not quite as exciting as Jordan Walker, but you have him projected for 16 home runs, 1 stolen base, 46, 53, and 261. And this is the biggest separation. But again, this is about playing time because Rudy only has him down for 4-1, 13, and 13. So it's a playing time separation in the ranks here.
Yeah, and this is another like this is again sort of like what you're saying with Jordan Walker, where if he somehow if Beatty breaks camp, he's going to be a huge fab guy. I think Escobar has the job locked up. So that's why I ranked Escobar above obviously, and I was saying that he's Escobar safe. So I don't think he's going to break camp, Beatty, but you never know. And like if he hits well in camp, it's going to be worth the last round flyer because like I actually like if Beatty had the job right now, I would put him above Josh Jung. Like I like his bat better than Josh Jung. I might be on my own with that sentiment, but I think like Beatty's power's insane. Like he's a 30 plus homer hitter like right now, and his Ks aren't really that bad. He has no speed, but no third baseman except for Brian Hayes have speed. So it's I like Beatty a lot. I just don't think he has the playing time. So that's my concern.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's playing time. I would say his raw power is probably slightly above Jung, but Jung I think is an equally good hitter. So it could go back and forth on those two. I mean, if we're looking at their production, Beatty had 21 home runs last year across three different levels and in about 100 games, 106 games. In 2021, Jung had 19 home runs in 80 games, give or take. So, I mean, the power production has been about the same, but I agree that he has a slightly more power upside. But Jung has a
Something's
clear
gonna
path.
happen. I mean, there'll be something that we're not anticipating with like in spring training, like you know, Vogelback and Escobar get locked in an elevator, and Vogelback eats Escobar, and it's like, well, we need someone, right? Like we have to have a DH or a third baseman. Something's gonna happen that people aren't anticipating right now. That's gonna change the landscape of one of these guys. Like Lars Nutbar is gonna get. Oh my God! Imagine Nutbar gets stuck in an elevator with Vogelback. Oh my God, bro! But seriously, it's something we're not anticipating right now is going to happen in spring training, and like someone's going to get hurt, and one of these guys is going to have like suddenly Batty or Walker or someone's going to like jump on the scene.
Yeah, so that's why that they get ranked. That's why they're on your list above where Rudy would have them, because we're taking that upside that they happen to make the team, or there's an injury, or whatever happens, and again trying to get it ahead of the claims that will ultimately come. Number next on your list is number 32. That is Gio Urshela. He's out in the Angels. Last year he had 12 home runs, two stolen bases, 41, 51, and hit 212. You have him projected for, last year he had 13 home runs, one stolen base, 61, 64, and 285. You have him projected for 10 home runs, one stolen bases, 44, 42, and 271. I mean, he's fine. He's a fine hitter. He's mostly part time. He got a little bit more than part time last year, but I think that's generally the reason he gets kind of pushed down is just not sure he's playing every day.
Yeah, I mean, Urshela, I like Urshela. Like you mentioned, he had 285 last year. He has really good contact. I mean, he's not going to blow you away. He's got no speed whatsoever. But I could see like in the Angels, Urshela right now is behind like Jared Walsh and Anthony Rendon. It's like hurt and hurter. they're they're not making it through the season. And Urshela, if he gets 410 at bats or 400 plus at bats, I think he could hit 15 homers and 280. And this late in the draft, there's value there. I mean, I know it doesn't sound necessarily that exciting, and there's not like huge upside, but I think he's probably underrated a little bit for like what's going to happen. Like right now, he's barely getting drafted in the top like 450. So he's going very late. He's going much later than I have him ranked. I still like I said earlier, this is no longer 12-team mixed league type guys. But Urshela, I think in a late 15 pick overall, I mean 15 team, a late pick overall, I think there's a little bit of value there because I think people are underestimating how much playing time he's going to get. Because right now it seems like he's only going to face lefties coming off the bench. But like I said, like Jared Walsh and Anthony Rendon, I mean, come on. Like, come on, bro. And Mike Trout too. I mean, no offense. I mean, Mike Trout's great, but come on, bro. What's he gonna play? 120 games? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, Urshela's a nice like in-game play in deep leagues and AL only because you're like the reason his draft stock is down so far is because you look at the lineup. It's like where does he play? But then you actually look at the lineup. You're like, well, Rendon doesn't play very often. He gets hurt. Brandon Drury, who knows if he continues what he did last year? He could just get benched and be a platoon, utility guy. Luis Rengifo obviously doesn't necessarily need to play every day either. Gio Urshela is not an amazing shortstop anymore, but he can play the position. So I mean, I think there's still room for Urshela to find playing time, which if you can wait for that, if you can, if you have the depth, if you're in deep enough league where that has value, I do think the numbers ultimately come out fine. And like they're probably similar to what we see from like a Justin Turner. Just you're not getting them right off the bat.
Yeah, no, totally. I think just saying like a random prediction, I'll say, even though I don't have them ranked this way, I will say Urshela will be more valuable on the player rater than Brandon Drury at the end of the year.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. I don't have any issue if you said he was going to be more valuable than Anthony Rendon, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
when was the last time Anthony Rendon was more valuable
Yeah.
than Gio Urshela was last
That's what
year?
I'm saying. Well, I didn't even rank Rendon yet. Well, he's still to come, and we're pretty deep.
Right, but I mean, in drafts though, he's going 100, 150 picks ahead of Urshela.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's got
More,
200 picks before.
yeah.
Yeah, no, Rendon's going in front of Justin Turner, which is nuts, bro. I mean, Rendon hasn't been good he hasn't been good this decade,
He hasn't
bro.
been healthy since 2019. So like you're like that's the last time he was any good.
And 2019,
The
they were
explosive ball.
they were playing with a bouncy ball, bro. I mean, it's like that. That was not like Rendon healthy, even healthy, which I wouldn't count on, is a 20 homer, 250 hitter. Like that's if he's healthy, which I would not count on. Anyway, let's go.
Let's go on. Next is number 33, which is Yohan Moncada. What a sad fall for Moncada, who used to be a top third baseman option. Last year, he had 12 home runs, two stolen bases, 41, 51, and he hit 212. You have him projected for 15 home runs, three stolen bases, 61, 58, and 212. A bit more optimistic, and this is one where Rudy is higher on him. He has him 16 home runs, four stolen bases, 64, 64, and a 241 average. It was a hideous season for Moncada, just like it was for the rest of the White Sox. I mean, at least he's not old, Gray.
Yeah, I was just thinking. Moncada said last preseason. Moncada said he was going to steal 30 bags. What, bro? Come on, man. Moncada's a jokester,
He had two
dude.
attempts.
He attempted two steals, bro. Oh man, yeah, Moncada seems like for whatever reason, I always think of Moncada in like best shape of his life type narratives in spring training. He comes into spring training and he's like, "Yo, let's do this." And then you get to June and he's got like 5 homers, 0 steals, and he's hitting 220. And you're like, what happened, bro? I thought you were gonna do this. I thought you were doing this. Yeah, I don't know. Moncada's awful. I honestly, I'm kind of surprised that I'm the low man on him. Like Moncada's going way earlier than I have him ranked. He's still not going that early, but he's going around 300 overall. I think Moncada is just like terrible. I would like if I were running the White Sox, I would have DFA'd him already. I think he's really like I don't know. I don't know what his deal is, but like he's going on he has 26 homers and 5 steals across 2 seasons, across like almost 148 games. I mean, excuse me, 248 games. Like he's awful. He's so bad. Anyway, I don't know, man. I'm not a fan, obviously. And he doesn't even make terrible contact. Like he hits the ball. It's just the worst type of contact. Like just awful. His hard hit percentage is like, oh, garbage. I mean, he's really not good. Anyway,
Yeah, it's not been a great run for Yoel Moncada, who I will fess up was like one of the first prospects I started. I remember like really getting in on. I was like watching tape of him, and I'm like, he's gonna be great. He's phenomenal. And yeah, it just hasn't ever really put it together. I mean, I will say there's maybe some upside for him just because again he's not terribly old. The White Sox together were just awful. He was awful at home last year. Um, he had 169 at home. He had 244 on the road. So maybe there's something there that at home for the White Sox was just awful. In September, he hit 252 with 5 home runs and his the two stolen bases he had all season. Maybe there's something to that. Again, to the thought process of maybe something changed in September. Probably not. Probably not worth it. But if you're all the way down here, if you're just like hoping for the randomness of the late picks, I don't hate Moncada after pick 300. Again, that may just be my biases kicking in, but there's still a lot of talent. He's not decrepit old. Maybe he can get traded from the White Sox. Maybe it's finally time he gets cut or traded and he lands in the right place. I don't know. But let's go ahead and move on. Moncada is not worth spending any more time on. The 34 through 43 we've covered, Gray. I'm just going to read the names off. It's Luis Rengifo, Wilmer Flores, Isaac Paredes, Spitzer Steer, DJ LeMahieu, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, Ramon Urias, Ezekiel Duran, Hassan Kim, and John Birdie. That rounds out 34 through 43. Your last tier here is, it's the number of guys we've talked about before. There's 4 guys that we really haven't talked about. It's all a bunch of old veteran guys. 44, you have Josh Donaldson. 45, Heimer Candelario. 46, Anthony Rendon. And 48, you have Evan Longoria. I mean, these guys are just like if you're absolutely have to play somebody at third base, right? We're not really expecting much from any of these guys.
yeah, I mean, I think that these guys are not only you have to play someone at third base, but you've also sort of given up on life. you've, you've reached a point where you're like, you know what? I don't even care. You're wearing sweatpants to church, bro. You're just like, I don't care, bro. I don't care. You know what? I'm getting married today and I'm wearing sweatpants. I don't care. You've given up. I don't know what happened, but I would talk to someone. There's people to talk to. Um, yeah, I wouldn't draft any of them. I last year, I mean, to give one of these guys to pull one out and give him like a half decent chance. Heimer Candelaria, I liked last year because he was coming off a year when he hit a ton of doubles, and I thought there might be something there. And Heimer Candelaria now on the Nats is like, I mean, he should play every day, I would think. I don't see why he wouldn't. So I don't know. Maybe if you're like crazy deep and you've got like nothing else left in the tank and you're running on empty and you're just like, I don't know, man. I'm sort of giving up on life, but I guess Heimer Candelaria. If you're reaching for the smelling salts and you're like, you know what? I just want a little perk. So maybe, I don't know, but like Josh Donaldson and Anthony Rendon, like I have them ranked and I've given them the projections are like under 400 at bats. Like I don't think we're seeing anywhere close to a full season from either of them. Like people are drafting them. I think at least Rendon, like we said, Rendon's go. I don't know what people are thinking drafting Rendon, but people are like Rendon's going at like 240 overall. So he's going even in the range of like 12 team mixed league, which is so funny. Like people have really lost their mind, but like Donaldson's going crazy late. And I guess people are like, maybe he's hitting like every day in the Yankees lineup, but like he was doing that last year and he wasn't good. He was not good. And I don't think he's getting better. And I also don't think he's going to be playing every day. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see him like this is like the swan song for Josh Donaldson. I mean the Yankees are out of their mind if they play him as much as they did last year. But the Yankees do like to play vets. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I do think there's a chance he could still play 110 plus games, which he shouldn't. I mean, he should play like less than 70, but I don't know. But maybe he gets some runs and RBIs, I guess is what I'm saying. But he's really not good. But we're super late. I mean, these are barely in the top 500 overall. Like these are really late guys. So you do what you want with them.
Yeah, I think you've called out the ones that I would. I mean, Cannellaro should have playing time. He should have a chance. Um, and you could do worse than 15 home runs, and then if you can get some average back, that's kind of what you're hoping for. Is you can get back to that, even in the middle of the two seasons, get to like a 240, 250. At least you'd have something to start at third base if you waited this long. Donaldson, like you said, at least he's in the middle of the Yankees lineup when he does play. So when he does hit the ball, maybe there's some runs and RBI opportunity. I think of the guys that I read off, I might be most interested in Longoria. He's not going to play more than 100 games. He's just not going to do it. But he actually is performing when he does play. So at least on a per game basis, he's the best option of them. And that's about as good as I can do down here.
Oh yeah, it's pretty sad, but yeah, I guess I agree.
I mean, he played less than 90 games. He had 14 home runs and in a 240 average last year. Like, that's
Yeah,
better than anybody else down here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, all these guys kind of like if you give them 500 plus at bats, they're gonna be halfway decent, like as far up as like the guy, like the Escobars, like the Eduardo Escobar down to like Evan Longoria. If you give them 500 at bats, they're going to be like at least halfway decent. It's just giving them 500 at bats is the problem. Like it's like
Yeah.
you can't necessarily just say like, okay, Josh Donaldson's getting 500 at bats in the middle of the Yankee order. Like, how can that be that bad? It's like, yeah, no, I get that, but he's not getting 500 bats. It's just not happening. And if he does, then, he has a Zombino type year and he has like, he bounces back, but you can't count on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely with you. I'm just going to read off the rest of the list here. 49, you have Jonathan Aranda. 50, Aledmus Diaz. 51, Jace Peterson. 52, J.D. Davis. 53, Patrick Wisdom. 54, Joey Wendell. And 55, Nicky Lopez. Any of this group that you want to kind of say, if you're just this late and you need a body, who are you going for out of this group?
No one. I'm kind of interested in like Jonathan Arenado. Man, is that confusing because I want to say Arenado. Arenado, I guess is the most interesting, like upside wise. But actually, the guy who I'm most interested in is a JD Davis bounce back because, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe he platoon play because he never plays. I mean, his sporadic his entire career. So maybe he doesn't play, but if he does play, I don't know. I mean, last year he hit 12 homers and 250 in 115 games. So yeah, I mean, it's not much worse. Honestly, that's not much worse than like guys going 200 picks before him. If JD Davis were to get the playing time, but he probably doesn't get the playing time. So I don't. There's not a ton of guys here though. Honestly, it's like it's bad.
Yeah.
It's not.
You named the only two that I was going to bring up, which was Jonathan Aranda, who's with the Rays. He had 18 home runs, 4 stolen bases, hit 318 last year for them. So there's a little bit of excitement around him. I believe he went for like $3 in our salary cap AL draft that we just got done doing. I will say there was a number of people who were like, "Oh, I'm saving him for dollar days bidding." So he's on people's radars, but that's about all right now. And I do think the JD Davis bounce back could be interesting. I mean, Lamont Wade Jr., David VR, Jock Peterson, uh, Mike Yastrzemski. Like, do any of these guys have to play, when was the last time Michael Conforto even touched the field for a Major League Baseball regular season game? So if any of those guys go down, I think JD Davis is probably the one that slots in. It's gonna be him or Wilmer Flores, and he's useful in a number of positions. And like I said, his numbers last year aren't really that bad. Like a 250, 15 to 20 home run hitter. If you gave him 150 games, that's not dissimilar than what we were talking about at like the 18 to 20 range at the position. So
Yeah.
there's some options here if you're scrambling, but we wouldn't really count on them. You're kind of waiting on things to turn over or waiting for them to find the positions. But there is some, very deep league AL only type of value here that could be had.
Yeah, no, completely.
All right, Gray. So that wraps us up for third base, which was, as we mentioned, very top heavy. A few interesting names in the middle, and then a whole lot of just blah in between. That's power only, average only, playing time concerns. But that's kind of what you're looking at third base this year. We're finally done with the infield, so we're going to be moving out to the outfield next week. I don't know exactly how many guys we'll cover, but we'll get into it. As always, if you want, you can follow us on Twitter. Send any comments or questions, whatever you have to us there. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is the owner of the at Razball account. You can watch us if you want. It is youtube.com/RazballFantasy. Those are up there if you want to see Gray's mustachioed beauty across from me in his Ferrari zip up. There, you can see it there. Until we get to outfielders, Gray, and try and run through as many as we can in 2 hours. I will see you next week, buddy.
All right, later.